NBC News has spoken to over a dozen White House officials, both former and current White House officials, all of which were anonymous, and found out that there is a lot of tension between Rex Tillerson and Donald Trump. Now, Rex Tillerson, of course, is the Secretary of State, and there have been numerous examples of Donald Trump undercutting Rex Tillerson. There have been examples of Rex Tillerson publicly making statements that seem to conflict with Donald Trump and seems to suggest that he's not really a fan of the president. But before we remind you of all those examples, let me give you the latest updates on what is happening within the White House. Now, Tillerson was, according to NBC News, on the verge of resigning this past summer amid mounting policy disputes and clashes with the White House, and that's according to senior administration officials. Tensions came to a head around the time President Donald Trump delivered a politicized speech to the Boy Scouts of America. Apparently, Rex Tillerson has had very close ties with the Boy Scouts. He was once the president of the Boy Scouts, and so he wasn't too happy with the way that speech went down. Tillerson also had openly disparaged the president, referring to him as a moron after a July 20th meeting at the Pentagon with members of Trump's national security team and cabinet officials. Now, when it comes to other cabinet members and other White House officials trying to convince him to stay, there were a number of people that were listed in this NBC News piece, one of which was Mike Pence, the vice president. According to NBC News, Pence has since spoken to Tillerson about being respectful of the president in meetings and in public, urging that any disagreements be sorted out privately, a White House official said. The official also said that progress has since been made. Then you also have John Kelly and Mattis, who have done what they could to convince Tillerson to remain in the position that he's in, mostly for political reasons. There's been so much chaos and so many people have either resigned or gotten fired in Trump's administration that Kelly and Mattis realized that Tillerson leaving would make things even worse. And so according to these White House officials who spoke to NBC News, he was convinced to stay even though he's been pretty unhappy. Now I want to go to a video featuring NBC's Stephanie Ruhle, and it has to do with Tillerson allegedly calling Trump a moron.
Because I think you had a chance to listen into what the secretary had to say. Obvious pushback here that the State Department foreshadowed, yet a dozen sources are telling us no, there is real tension between these two.
Pushback, but he didn't deny it, and I'll tell you, my source,
didn't
and that's
deny the
only
moron
single
piece,
source
right?
for me. Yeah, my source didn't just say that he called him a moron. He said an effing moron. And think about, put it into context.
I mean, he's right.
Yeah, I mean, why is it so shocking to think that Rex Tillerson had a moment of clarity? I think, and the fact that he didn't deny it, he probably said it, and man, doesn't it make you guys, well, what a great working place where your diplomat is Mike Pence. That's your peacemaker, the guy that thinks there should be electrotherapy on homosexuals and was too conservative for the state of Indiana. That's your diplomat, that's your peacemaker.
The guy who thinks aborted fetuses need a proper burial.
Yeah,
that's Mike Pence, he's the diplomat.
That's your guy, that's your voice of reason in between those two.
Yeah, we live in a scary place when that's the voice of reason. Actually, I was making the point earlier this week that it's a little concerning that the former CEO of ExxonMobil seems to be one of the only individuals within this White House that has moments of clarity, especially when it comes to things like, I don't know, nuclear war.
How about it?
That's crazy, that's crazy. And I could understand Tillerson being frustrated with someone like Donald Trump, who doesn't really seem to have any type of consistent foreign policy, who seems to act erratically and based on emotion at any given moment. And we're talking about foreign policy issues that risk the lives of potentially millions of people. And so Tillerson, although I disagree with him on a number of things, at least understands the weight of these issues, whereas Donald Trump is like, oh, it's 4 in the morning, let me just tweet nonsense that could put a lot of people in harm's way. Now, Tillerson did respond to this NBC piece, which I thought was interesting. And I want you to pay close attention to what he did admit and what he did not admit. Let's go to video number 6.
The vice president has never had to persuade me to remain as Secretary of State because I have never considered leaving this post. Let me tell you what I've learned about this president, whom I did not know before taking this office. He loves his country. He puts Americans and America first. He's smart. He demands results wherever he goes, and he holds those around him accountable for whether they've done the job he's asked them to do. Accountability is one of the bedrock values the president and I share.
Oh, how painful
Accountability.
is that?
He's all about accountability. Oh, I didn't know that. So the beauty of Trump is how he makes otherwise respected people look ridiculous.
Yeah.
So that's Rex Tillerson, former head of Exxon or whatever. That guy is normally respected, and he just makes him look like a jackass. That's just one lie after another. He's really smart. He's really good for people, and he's a patriot, and I love him.
Yeah, well,
yeah, I don't understand why he feels the need to backpedal here. I mean, like, look, all you have to be is like, look, have you seen Trump? Do you think he's an easy guy to work for? There's been more turnover at the White House than at a third-party pyramid scheme, and probably the same integrity as one. Just be like, look, it's not easy being here. Yeah, I think about leaving daily. Can you blame me?
What I was telling you off air, it's funny that Tillerson, his breaking point was the Boy Scout speech, right? That's what really caused all the problem. Not only the other stuff, it was the Boy Scout speech that bothered him. Because why? Because now Rex Tillerson is close with the Boy Scouts. He used to be president of the Boy Scouts. He's an Eagle Scout himself, so his life involves the Scouts a lot. Now he's embarrassed, so now it affects him personally. So he understands why Trump's such a jackass, because it affected him personally, like a classic Republican.
Right, exactly. Let's hear from Tillerson and whether or not he ever referred to Trump as a moron.
Could you address the main headline of this story that you called the president a moron? And if not, where do you think these reports or ideas are?
I'm not going to deal with petty stuff like that. I mean, this is what I don't understand about Washington.
So he did not deny that he called Trump a moron. I believe that he called Trump a moron. He apparently did so, pretty openly during that meeting. And
what part of Washington doesn't he understand? When the Secretary of State calls the president a fucking moron, that it's going to get reported in the press? I don't understand that. I don't get it. How does that happen? What, you don't understand how that they have electronic ways of communicating? What is it that he doesn't understand? That's news when the Secretary of State calls the president an effing moron.
Exactly. And look, I remember in the summer, Tillerson took a vacation
like
to Texas, a hiatus, and that was when people thought, oh, Tillerson's gone.
Yes.
He is done. And I think that is, according to the reporting that we're seeing here, when Pence convinced him to kind of mend the situation with Trump. And look, there were some public displays of tension that we're gonna get to in just a second. But first, a response from Trump on this NBC piece. Let's go to graphic 14. He says the NBC News story has just been totally refuted by Secretary Tillerson and Vice President Pence. It is fake news. They should issue an apology to America. But I love how anytime he gets his feelings hurt and his ego bruised, he tries to sell it to the American people as an insult to America.
Yeah.
No. It's not an insult to America. NBC News isn't, in this particular case, doing some sort of disservice to Americans. It's a disservice. You feel like it's a disservice to you because it hurt your feelings. But did Tillerson call you a moron? Yeah. Do most Americans think you're a moron? Yeah. Does the international, community consider you a moron? Yeah. Okay, get your feelings hurt. You're an idiot. All right. So, and look, the reason why I believe Tillerson called him a moron is because he could barely contain himself during some interviews. So let me give you the first example. Following the hate rally that took place in Charlottesville, Virginia, and following Trump's refusal to condemn those on the right, the neo-Nazis, the white supremacists, Tillerson was asked about Trump's response, and he made it very apparent that he did not agree with Trump's response. He wasn't happy with Trump's response. Let's go to video 8. Take a look.
When the president gets into the kind of controversy he does and the UN committee responds the way it does, it seems to say they begin to doubt whether we're living those values.
I don't believe anyone doubts the American people's values or the commitment of the American government or the government's agencies to advancing those values and defending those values.
And the president's values?
And the president speaks for himself, Chris.
Are you separating yourself from that, sir?
I've made my own comments as to our values as well in a speech I gave to the State Department this past week.
So I'm not separating myself. That's how you could have translated that one.
The president speaks for himself, and then of course there's the example from earlier this week where Rex Tillerson was very publicly undercut by Donald Trump in regard to North Korean foreign policy. Now, Tillerson was attempting to de-escalate the situation with North Korea so we don't engage in nuclear war, and Trump didn't like that, so he tweeted about it and said, Tillerson needs to stop negotiating with Little Rocket Man. And Tillerson didn't like that, and he was asked about it during a press conference. Here's his reaction to it.
The back and forth tweets with Kim Jong-un, how is that at all helpful to the situation?
We're going to continue to pursue our diplomatic efforts and hope that that's the way we'll solve this. Thank you.
So again, Trump very publicly undercut his own Secretary of State on Twitter. And even after he did so, Tillerson reiterated that he plans on pursuing a diplomatic approach to further de-escalate the situation so we don't have to engage in something that could be potentially disastrous for the lives of millions of people. Again, it's crazy. ExxonMobil CEO, former ExxonMobil CEO, is the reasonable one here.
If you like this clip of the Young Turks, you know there's a whole live 2-hour show, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern every day, and you can download it or stream it and watch it without ads if you become a member. TYTnetwork.com/join.